here from Bonnie Carolee Makes Cards. Welcome back to Crafty Meraki's channel. Today's card is all about vellum layering, and a vellum window for a shaker. I love the look. It is so soft and pretty. This sweet shaker features Meraki Moments hugs and the beautiful Artisan Floral Wreath die set. I wanted to have a scrunched up bow for the center of my spray. I'm going to be using seam binding. This is made from rayon and it accepts color very well. I'm adding on some pink and orange pigment powders to create a deep peachy tone. It's sprayed really well with water and then it's going to be scrunched up, and I have a glove on to avoid getting stained fingers. All the moisture is squeezed out and I'm going to let it dry in that ball so that it's all crinkly. And it doesn't take long. In about an hour and a half it'll be dry and ready to use. I have a panel of dark gray cardstock which has been cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. It has been die cut with an oval die. I'll use the next largest die in the nesting die set to cut black sheet foam. The black sheet foam is oversized. This shaker is going to have a vellum window and it will be sandwiched between the gray cardstock panel and the foam. The vellum will be adhered over the die cut opening on the gray cardstock panel. I'll be using double-sided tape, and as I place my tape around the window, it is easier to manipulate it if I remove the backing paper as I go. So of course it would be much easier if I use liquid adhesive, but liquid adhesive and vellum are not a good mix. The moisture from the liquid adhesive will cause the vellum to ripple. This is not a look that I'm going for, so I've elected to use the double-sided tape. And once the adhesive has been placed around the oval window, I'll add a strip of the tape at the top and bottom of the panel to hold the vellum down securely. Of course, there is no backing paper around the oval window, and I just need to remove it from the strips, and I can take my vellum panel and lay it on top. I have a little bit of the vellum that is overhanging the card front, so I'm going to trim that off. The card front is now going to be adhered to the black foam. Because the oval die cut is smaller than the one that was die cut from the foam, it is going to be very easy to align them and not have any of the foam showing around the oval's edges. And I am using a liquid adhesive, even though this is going to come in direct contact with the vellum paper. Not applying just any liquid adhesive, this is Tombow. And this adhesive is completely dry, and you know when it's dry because it goes translucent. It is tacky. It takes a little while to dry, probably 15 or 20 minutes. This adhesive works extremely well with vellum. The foam that I was working with was oversized so that I could easily line up the oval windows, and so now I'll use a large pair of shears and, holding the blades at an angle, trim off the excess. This shaker is going to be completed independent from the card base. And I like to use my Misty stamping platform to help me do this. The foam insert is removed from the Misty. Then I can take my panel, place it face down into the Misty, snugging it right into the corner. The shaker material is a beautiful confetti mix of pink, peach, and gold sequins. These colors will be reflected with the various elements that will go on the card front. Because I am no longer coming in direct contact with the vellum, I can go back to my regular adhesive. I make sure that I have good coverage around the oval window and the edges of the foam. And the shaker is finished off with a backing of pretty coral cardstock, which is the exact same size as the foam backed panel of 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. And to make sure that there's good contact between the panel and the foam, I'll set some weight on it for a few minutes. In the meantime, I can prepare a pretty gold frame for around the oval window. The same oval dies that were used to cut both the foam and the gray cardstock are taped together to cut gold matte cardstock. When working with fine die cuts of foil cardstock, I like to go back to the Tombow adhesive. After the adhesive is applied, it is set aside to dry completely until it is in its tacky state. There will be no worries with any of that liquid adhesive getting on the foil finish and ruining that look. And while that's drying, I can go ahead and prepare my sentiment using the Meraki Moments Hugs die set. This is a 3-piece die set, but for this card, I'll be using just the die that produces the lettering. I've cut both coral cardstock and black sheet foam. The foam die cuts have been left in the backing. I have removed the center of the letters. When die cutting foam, it will leave an impression. This makes it very easy to align the cardstock letters to the foam die cuts. And as you can see, I wasn't overly careful as I applied my glue. It doesn't matter if it oozes out onto the backing of the foam. Once the letters are in place, it is set aside to dry completely. The liquid adhesive on the foam requires extra drying time. If I try to remove the letters too soon, they will slip out of alignment. I know, and here we go again, another. So while that's drying, now we can add the shaker card front to an A2 size black top folding card base. There are 2 styles of leafy sprigs found in the Artisan Floral Dies Wreath die set. I'll be using one of them, which has been die cut 2 times from light gray cardstock and also vellum paper. The vellum die cut will be layered on top for a soft, airy look. For now, they'll be tacked at the base of the sprig and the bottom couple of leaves with glue dots. They'll also be slightly offset from one another. This die cut goes in one direction, but I want to use a pair of these leaves going in the other direction to create a spray. There is a right side of the die cut, and you can tell because it is slightly curved under on the edges. For the 2 die cuts that are going to be going on the other direction, I'll be using the wrong side of the die cut. To help disguise that, I've run that through the die cutter to flatten out the edges. And honestly, this is probably taking things just a bit too far because once everything goes on the sprays, you would have to look very hard to see the difference between the 2 pairs of leaves. The gold matte frame is ready to be adhered to the oval window opening on the card front. So here's the other benefit of working with Tombow adhesive when it has been dried. It is also repositionable for a while. As you can see, I can lift it up and make any minor adjustments. Because the base layer of the 2 sprigs that have been tacked together is the cardstock one, I can use regular adhesive to adhere them to the bottom of the oval. Just in case you're wondering why I switch adhesives, it is because I do not like using Tombow in this wet application. If it oozes out, of course it will dry clear just like the regular adhesive, but it will be tacky, which is why we like it for dry applications. But in this application, it might leave residue, which has to be removed. 2 different styles of flowers have been used from the Wreath die set. Picking up from the colors that are found in the shaker material mix, they were die cut from rose, coral, and pink cardstock. I'm doing some very simple shaping using a ball tool and a molding mat. If you don't have these tools, the petals can be easily shaped by just rolling them on the barrel of a pencil. For the ball tool, the die cut is face down on the mat and a little circular motion is made on the end of each of the petals. The die cut is flipped over and depressed in the center. For the 2 layered flowers, the second layer is positioned offset onto the first one and depressed again. For the center of the flowers, I'm going to be working with prills. These come in various colors. I'll be adding gold. These are super tiny beads. They're not really beads. I'm not sure exactly what the material is that they're made of. However, what I do know is that they need to be contained. A coffee filter works well for me. Each of the 2 lengths of ribbon were tied into a bow and then adhered together, and I cut the tails off completely. And I'll give that just a couple of minutes to dry and then add a dollop of glue to the center of the 2 sprays of leaves and then add my scrunched up bow to the middle. For the single flowers, the base of them is quite small, and so I'm going to take small foam squares and cut them in half so they can be adhered to the spray. As I'm adhering the flowers and putting them in place, I'm also taking the foam squares and popping up those leaves underneath the cardstock die cut. I have my sentiment laid out, and so now it's time to adhere it. Because the letters would be overhanging onto the vellum window, liquid adhesive was only applied to the portion of the letters that would sit on the cardstock. I did go back in behind each of the flowers and added another foam square that was positioned between the cardstock leafy sprig and the vellum one. The card was embellished with lots of confetti using the same mix that was used in the shaker material. For the sequins that were adhered to the cardstock, I used regular adhesive. For any of the confetti that was sitting directly on the vellum, I switched over to glue dots. All of the confetti was finished off with Nouveau Crystal Drops Morning Dew. When dry, this medium is clear, giving the confetti a jewel-like appearance. And that completes this soft and pretty shaker with its vellum window and vellum leafy overlays. I love that the Artisan Floral Dies set wreath can be configured in so many ways. Sure to check out other videos using this die set. Thank you for stopping by, and as always, we appreciate your visits.